thank you for coming. We're going to get started on the SB 11, the school safety and mental health law. I printed it out. It's about this thick. It's very, very in-depth, and luckily we have a lady here who knows all about it. Her name is Linahan, and Alice is an established leader in new media with Voices in Power and Vice President of Women on the Wall. Alice is the author of Your Child's Number One Threat and a winner of the 2014 Upton Sinclair Award with EducationViews.org for her work as an advocate for securing the best education policies for the next generation of American children. And Alice speaks publicly throughout the country to educate parents and taxpayers on the truth about what is happening in education. We have administrators here from Paradise, luckily. Thank you very much for coming. And so she'll be able to answer some of your questions also. And we've also talked to the administrators in Bridgeport, so hopefully we can give you some information on how they're planning to implement some of these new laws. So Alice, take it away.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. And if you go to womenonthewall.org, which that's the organization that I'm a part of, you can find this PowerPoint presentation on the website, and I really want you to go there and find this presentation, because the information that I'm going to give to you tonight, the documents that document that information are in this PowerPoint. They're live links. So I encourage you to go to Women on the Wall and find that. The information I can give you tonight can be very overwhelming. It's a lot. These, if you'll just kind of share, because we've got a lot more people than packets that I have. So I want to start with a little story. You'll notice this "Can I See?" We've got the sign there, and with Women on the Wall, we had a campaign where we were calling on parents to go into their children's schools, all schools, public schools, private schools, charter schools, and ask 3 questions. And when you ask these questions, it will lead you down a very crazy path. But this path is very important, and I want to challenge all of you. Don't believe a word I say tonight. Go and prove me wrong. Find the documents to prove me wrong. And if I am wrong, I will humbly, publicly say that I am wrong. And I'll get back to being a mom. Because when you ask, can I see what you're teaching my child? Can I see how you're teaching my child? What is the professional development of the teachers? What are the instructional materials? How are you, is it an online digital program? Number 3 is key. And this is what sent us down Pandora's box. Can I see who's financially benefiting from the curriculum products on which my child's teacher is evaluated?
Wow. I like that one.
And let me tell you something. There's a whole lot of people in the education industry who are making a living, which is good. It's a good thing. We live in America. We are a capitalist society. We are about free markets. But there's a caveat to that. And you'll notice the green, yellow, and red on this packet. And that's very significant. And I have a friend of mine, Brandon Darby, who he tells a very interesting story. He's actually the editor-in-chief of Bridgeport, Texas. But he is someone who actually became the FBI informant that stopped the bombing of the Republican National Convention in 2008. And when Brandon Darby tells that story, he talks about how they organized people into the green, yellow, and red. Green people were good, honest, hardworking Democrats that disagreed with the Republicans, and they bussed them there to hold up protest signs. They weren't doing anything bad or illegal. They were just there holding up protest signs. Then you had the yellow people. They were a little more radical, a little more in the know, and they were supposed to lock arm in arm with PVC pipe and hold back the police. The green people didn't know about the yellow people. Then you have the red people. They're the ones that would actually throw the Molotov cocktail or throw the bomb. They were the ones organizing it. So what does this have to do with education? Well, I was meeting, this was several years ago, with Dr. Stillman, who's the director of Region 11 Service Center in Fort Worth. He's a good guy. He was trying to tell me how wonderful C-Scope was, this curriculum management system. And I listened, but I told him, Dr. Stillman, you and I are going to have to agree to disagree, because I've done a whole lot of research on C-Scope, and I don't agree with you. I don't think it's a good thing. And I said, but let me tell you a story. And I told him about Brandon Darby and the green, yellow, and red people. And I said, Dr. Stillman, I don't think you're trying to harm my kids. I think you're a good guy. You're from Munster, Texas. You gotta be. And I said, but your job, how you put your food on your children's table, you're supposed to go to a conference, learn about the latest and greatest 21st century learning, and then you're supposed to come back to my children's school district and rent or sell them this curriculum management system that at best is harmful, at worst is indoctrinating my children. So I don't think you're bad, I think you're green. You're being used. And until you dig into the big system that has happened in Texas and has happened in the country, if you don't dive into that and you're busy every day just trying to get food on your table and keep your head above water, you're going to be used. And there's a lot of really good people in education today. There's a lot of good people that are working at that service center. There's a lot of really good legislators who we put in office. But unless they dig to understand who's financially benefiting from the curriculum products on which my child's teacher is evaluated, they're not going to get it. So it's our job, because it's our kids, the next generation of Texans and the next generation of Americans who are being harmed by this. So I'm going to go through, talked about can I see, but now we've moved from can I see, which is really a pretty weak position for a parent, can I see what you're teaching my child, to I can see. I can see what you're teaching my child. I can see how you're teaching my child, and I can see who is financially benefiting. I can see. But now are moved along the path or the journey to where we need to be asking, can I see what data you're collecting on my child? Can I see how that data is being used? And can I see who's financially benefiting from the data that is being collected on my child from online digital learning? Because this is tied to the Common Core, but we're way past the Common Core now.
That's right.
We're in Education Reform 2.0, and data is their greatest commodity. And our children are seen as an investment vehicle. And what people don't understand is that Texas is the hotbed for all of this. And our children's private data is being collected, and it is psychological data that is being collected, and it's not being collected so that they can know who little Johnny is. They could really care less about little Johnny. They are collecting the data in order to create software programs to benchmark the child, and then the software or the algorithm creates assessments and instruction to modify the child's attitudes, values, beliefs, and behaviors. That's why they need to access the child. So there is a fundamental shift in education today, and it is away from knowledge-based academics as 2 + 2 = 4 to values, beliefs, and behaviors. But this is not 21st century learning. This is the same battle that's been fought for years. Many of you who are with Eagle Forum, Concerned Women for America, you've been fighting the battle against outcome-based education. And if you listen to Commissioner of Education Mike Morath, he is all about outcome-based education. The question is, who's deciding the outcomes? Who's deciding the outcomes? There's a term, total quality management, TQM. And if you go to Voices in Power, it's on your sheet, and in the search you put TQM, you're going to get an article that documents Texas's compliance for education and TQM. Total quality management is a system to control the quality of an end product. And most business people would agree that that's a good system. But you've got to collect a lot of data to make sure that your product is a quality product. But the question is, what if the product is our child? And all these software programs, these Gmail suites, these apps that your children are being exposed to in 21st century learning that your school district is using, whether it's public school or private school, most of those software programs are free. But wouldn't you agree that if it's free, you're the product? Kind of like Facebook, kind of like Google.
Yep.
Our children are the product. Now, in Texas, we said no to the Common Core national standards. But the reality is we didn't have to say yes, because Texas had the first college and career ready standards. And what you have to understand about college and career ready standards, Common Core aligned standards, they're actually data tags. Think of it as when you are tagging your face on a picture on Facebook. That's a data tag. So the college and career ready standards are data tags, and they're actually aligned to UNESCO's Sustainable Development Goals. And those data tags are key because it's important to understand who is aligned with the United Nations. And that would be Microsoft and the Gates Foundation and Google. And they have aligned themselves to push and promote the United Nations goals. Now, when you go, and I'm kind of going through this fast because I want to be able to kind of just lay a groundwork and let you ask questions. But it's important to understand that UNESCO, Microsoft, Google, they're all working together. But how is it that it's getting into our children's schools? Well, it's interesting because in 2001, some of you might remember, No Child Left Behind, which was actually a reauthorization of the 1965 bill, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. What was significant about No Child Left Behind in 2001 is that that's the first time that when you took those federal grants, you had to do state testing, state assessments. It's also when they set up the statewide longitudinal database system. It was illegal to have a national database on children, so what they did is they set up 50 separate database systems. Texas took $18+ million to set up that database system. Now, in 2009, with the stimulus package, all 50 states got the federal dollars to upgrade that database system. Here's a very important point. In 2012, the Obama administration changed the regulation. He didn't change the law, but he changed the regulation on the FERPA law, the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. It's kind of like HIPAA in healthcare. It's our children's privacy in their classroom. Well, what he did is he changed the regulation on the law to say that our children's private data can be collected without consent in the name of research.
Wow.
That's what opened up Pandora's box for Microsoft and Google and all of these technology companies to access the data. The school districts, the state is not selling the data. They're getting free access to the data. That is very important. In 2014, Congress passed WIOA, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And what that did is it binds education, those federal dollars that are coming to the state, under the Department of Labor, Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Defense, and Department of Education. So we can get rid of the Department of Education tomorrow and it would not matter because they've got federal dollars coming to the state. When Governor Abbott announced his school safety plan, a reporter asked him, how are you going to pay this? And he said, in part through federal dollars from HHS, Health and Human Services. Well, when you take those federal dollars, you must align to the 2015 Every Student Succeeds Act, which is actually a reauthorization of the 1965 Elementary and Secondary Education Act and replaced No Child Left Behind. So what is important about that is no matter where those federal dollars are coming from, for our schools, they must align to the Every Student Succeeds Act. And the Every Student Succeeds Act mandates college and career readiness standards, which are data standards, and social and emotional learning, and mental as well. That's right. So there is no way out of the system. You'll hear Republicans say, school choice, school choice. There is no choice. When that money follows the child, so do the mandates to come under the college and career readiness standard. And oh, by the way, we're now all lifelong learners. That means that every student succeeds, meaning this system is from preschool, actually in the UN documents, it's prenatal, through the workforce. It's a womb to tomb. So when you go to get your real estate license, when you go on Indeed.com to put in your resume and it asks you if you want to start taking assessments to give you the best job, this is not just a K through 12 attack. This is every American from womb to tomb. This is called a P20W system. Important to note, earlier I said it was illegal to have a national database on children. Well, in 2019, Congress passed FEPA, the Foundations for Evidence-Based Policy Making, which makes all of those agency databases interoperable.
Yeah, they're on both.
And so the data that is being collected, it is on all of us, but it is especially targeted at our children, because we actually are kind of set in our ways. We're Texans, we're Americans. If we actually knew what was going on, wouldn't we stand up and fight? Well, what they're doing, those benchmarking and assessments, those programs, the social and emotional learning programs that are coming into your children's schools are designed not by the educators or the administrators who are implementing them. Many of them are green and have all the right intentions of the world. They see our children harming themselves. They see our children in harm's way. So they're doing everything that they can. So they're being provided a social and emotional learning program. And that SEL, that social emotional learning program, is designed to modify the child's values, beliefs, and behaviors. So they're being locked in place. And if you don't believe me, go on this document and click on the OECD's document. And it's interesting because the OECD is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It's a world policy organization. And the OECD runs an assessment system connected to UNESCO, the UN's education arm. The OECD's assessment director, Andre Schleicher, he's a German, worked with the Obama administration to reshape the U.S. K-12 online curriculum. The OECD assessments are assessing behaviors more than academics. And from this document, this is the quote, "The skills, attitudes, and values that shape human behavior should be rethought to counter the discriminatory behaviors picked up at school and in the family." All young children should be able to challenge gender and cultural stereotypes to reflect on the causes and solutions of racial, religious, and hate violence, and to help create tolerant, integrated societies. So you wonder why our kids are believing and doing the things that they're doing. Now it's important, and I've only got 5 minutes, so I'm going to answer questions later, and I'll direct it at Senate Bill 11. But what's important to note, and you'll find it in this document, is that TASA, the Texas Association of School Administrators, and TASB, the Texas Association of School Boards, came out with this new vision for public education. And they were actually piloting the next generation of assessments and accountability that tie into the OECD's assessment system. And everyone's saying, get rid of the STAR, get rid of the STAR, which I agree, the STAR is not a valid assessment. It's designed, this whole system is designed to get us to be saying, get rid of the STAR, get rid of the STAR, because what's coming next are the next generation of assessments and accountability. And that commission, the Texas legislature already set up that commission. That commission has already put out its report. Interestingly enough, the Commissioner of Education, who's a software entrepreneur, he's not an educator. He was on the next generation of assessments commission. He got moved to Commissioner of Education, no background in education. And the person who took his spot on the next gen committee actually went to MIT, and her husband designs education software and gaming. So it's important to understand what the #1 recommendation of the next generation of assessments and accountability is: online, digital learning, and instruction. Many of us in this room could probably tell a story of a teacher who changed our lives. I know 5 of them. I wouldn't be standing here today if it wasn't for these 5 teachers. That's what they need to get rid of. Because if they can put an iPad or a Chromebook in front of our child, there is nothing that can come between that child and the learning. And if the teacher is evaluated based on the algorithms of what that child is putting in, you've just reduced that teacher from an educator to a facilitator. And that's why we've got to understand what's happening. And the Senate Bill 11, Senate Bill 10, HB 18, and Senate Bill 504 are all designed to work to collect the behavioral data on our children so they can use Child Find to get that mental wraparound services. Our children are in harm's way. And it's not the administrators, it's not the educators. It's a system that they are being mandated, and they're green. They don't have the time. They're taking care of our kids. They need to be knowledgeable about the system, and until we go in to those schools and go from can I see to I can see and get them to see it, and for local school boards to push back, because that's what they want to eliminate, is that locally elected school board. That's what school choice is all about. The difference between a charter school and a traditional public school is a locally elected school board. And those who can profit off our education system need to eliminate the locally elected school board. So we need to empower that locally elected school board.
Did you want to kind of, in 2 minutes, roll in what you have just talked about to how it relates to SB 11? Because I know that's what a lot of people are here about.
Yes, when you understand that the shift in education that I'm talking about is away from knowledge-based academics, that 2 + 2 is 4, which your veteran teachers who know how to teach math or know how to teach English, when they bring in a program like C-Scope, all of that is designed to shift to the behavioral. And when you look at what first Senate Bill 504, what it did is it set up for social emotional learning and for the professional development of our teachers in social emotional learning. That's the behavioral. And so when you understand that our children are being psychologically profiled, they're using learning theories and teaching strategies that are actually causing our kids. Isn't it funny that in the last 10 years, the suicide rate has skyrocketed? Isn't it interesting that we have all these shootings? Well, what's happened in the last 10 years? Well, it's interesting. Austin ISD was the pilot program for social and emotional learning, CASEL. And in this document, let me give you the numbers. Suicide ideations, this is just 2017 to 2018, is 878 cases in Austin ISD. Attempted suicides, 378. Non-suicidal harm or cutters, 1,181. CPS referrals, 875. Intensive counseling sessions, 4,815. Why isn't anyone asking, is this 21st century learning, Common Core aligned college and career readiness standards, social emotional learning, isn't that causing this? So this solution of Senate Bill 11, Senate Bill 10, that was wrapped into Senate Bill 11, they're not actually going after what's causing our children to harm themselves. They're actually furthering the system to collect data to modify our children's values, beliefs, and behaviors. So Senate Bill 11 and Senate Bill 10 are a part of this system. And unless our elected officials understand the system, they're green and they don't know that they're being used. So that's why we've got to go in and protect our children.
Our intention here was to just let parents know, especially about the SB 11, and I'm gonna ask Alice to come back and more relate to that, and you can ask her questions. We just are really trying to get the information out there to make sure that there's transparency in how this is being implemented, to make sure that our kids and our students are not losing any freedoms or any rights in the process, and parents' rights are protected in the process as well. So I'm gonna open it up to questions now for Alice and Debbie.
I do want to connect a dot on and let you know, Senate Bill 10 is more the health care bill. It sets up, and what these bills do is it sets up the framework for funding and grants to come in through the state and to the school for these programs.
Mental health, right?
Mental health, yeah. Senate Bill 10 is mental health. So it sets up telemedicine. So let's say there's a child that's showing signs of issues, then that's when the school district is required to get that consent from parents to set up this telemedicine. This was piloted out of Texas Tech University, this telemedicine program. And actually, the research and the data shows it wasn't as successful as it was presented to our legislators. So look at the research of the programs that are coming into your school district. So that's what Senate Bill 10 and Senate Bill 11 set up. Think of it as the framework for funding. Did you want to say?
Yes, Alice, if I may. So you've heard of HIPAA and FERPA. She's covered FERPA. FERPA trumps HIPAA. So anything
Yes.
that's medical that comes with your child, IEPs, 504s, anything of that nature will be subject to FERPA, and And there have been discussions on how to go around FERPA on a national level, and they are pursuing those, so,
And I want people to know, Lisa
Sorry.
is here, she lives in Texas, thank God, we got her
moved to
here.
Texas.
But she came from Utah,
Yeah.
where a lot of this was piloted and,
yeah, so I was on the Utah State School Board on
Yeah.
the state level. I watched it all implement, or we just finished adopting the health standards on sick and by them. I was able to get, Sika talk about, teaching second graders, sexual anatomy. I was able to get that out, but otherwise it was a tough fight. Yeah, but it's going across the nation, and Utah's just the latest state to follow suit in California's footsteps. They just released the teacher resources, and they're using California Planned Parenthood resources, which there's a big fight this Thursday about, so, yeah.
And so if you think of Senate Bill 10 as kind of the healthcare bill, it actually got knocked out. We stopped Senate Bill 10, thankfully Jonathan Stickland. But what the legislature did, and it's not wisdom, they just tacked it on to Senate Bill 11 at the last minute. Senate Bill 11 encompasses your safety, fortifying your facilities, which we want
They're hidden,
that.
in other words.
I mean, we
You're
want
talking about smoke carrying weapons, that type of thing?
Right.
Is that what you're?
fortifying the building, and there's going to be, and this is important, federal grants that come through that framework. And that's important to understand, because when it's federal grants, even just one grant to the state, not even just to the district, one federal grant to the state, like Title I, when they pass the state budget, that mandates the alignment of all of the state to the federal standards. And what's important to understand, it's interesting because those national comprehensive sex standards came out at the same time as Common Core. Isn't that interesting? Well, the reason is Common Core was marketed as just English, language arts, and math. But what they did is they embedded the national sex education standards within English, language arts, and math. And so our ELA TEKS, Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, just went through a revamp, and now the health standards are going through a revamp. And interestingly, the big battle on Senate Bill 11, which part of it was to fortify the facilities, but the other part of it was health care. So they merged the facilities and the security with the mental health. And there was a big battle about the language, healthy relationships. And for those of us who've been in this battle, when we saw the language, especially Debbie, of healthy relationships, we knew that was a trigger word for two trigger words, because we know that that's directly aligned with these national sex education standards. So our legislators fought that battle and got that language taken out of Senate Bill 11, and that's how they maneuvered to get a lot of these elected officials to sign on to the bill. They said, we got rid of that language. Well, it's just so interesting because Commissioner Mike Morath, when he announced these health standards, the revamp of the health standards, he specifically used the language healthy relationships. So that's what a lot of these bills, Senate Bill 10, Senate Bill 11, Senate Bill 504. If you look at the language, it gives the Commissioner of Education, who is an appointed, he's not elected, an appointed commissioner, the power to write the rules and regulations for all of these bills. So language that they get pulled out of it to get legislators to pass it, they put back in it when they go through these standards. That's a tactic that the red people are using. It's just like what Obama did with the FERPA law, the Family Education Rights and Privacy. He changed the rules and regulations. And that's what's important to understand is a lot of elected officials, a lot of administrators don't realize what the tactics of the red people.
Yeah, I seem to recall when all this legislation was happening towards the end of the session that you and I had a conversation about when it was SB 10 was being voted on the Senate. Some of our state legislators tried to appease us by getting language in there that said that you had to have parental consent to do some of the things that we're concerned about. But you pointed out that one of the problems is that when these school districts are taking federal money, the state law may say you have to have parental consent, and the federal says you don't, and they tend to side with the federal government, thinking the federal government has higher authority than the state government, and so that sets us up for a problem on that when actually they don't. But worse than that, if I recall, that when it got to the House, one of the ways that it was supposedly made us feel more comfortable with it was Jeff Leach put in there something similar, but he then said at the end of the statement, I'm not sure if it initially got passed this way, something to the effect that state law mandates parental consent unless overruled by federal guidelines. He basically even spelled out which made it worse, because had he not done that, it could be that our Attorney General could have said, no, we don't have to listen to the federal government and state. The way Leach wrote it, now we're susceptible to it. Do you want to comment on that?
Well, yes, what's important to know is that federal grant money brings power. And that's what No Child Left Behind was, a bully pulpit. We actually had legislators who said that they passed a law against Common Core in Texas. But yet, when we applied to the federal government for waivers on No Child Left Behind, we had to prove to them that we were, I think the number, we were 94% aligned to the college and career readiness standards and that are aligned to Common Core. So it's that federal grant money that forces the state to mandate that on our school districts. And what's so important to understand is when they changed the FERPA law, opening it up for research, that negates any parental consent. And so all that social emotional learning data, your child may have to have parental consent to do a telemedicine, or to actually, I think you're in the health care industry and the mental health industry. So to see you, they would have to get parental consent. The problem is that a lot of these teachers and school districts bringing in don't have the credentials you have to be doing this kind of social emotional learning with our kids. I'll give you a perfect example. Our teachers are being evaluated and trained not on if they teach our kids to do math, 2 + 2 is 4, they're being evaluated on if they're using the 4 C's, creativity, and you might have collaboration, critical thinking. So they're evaluated on this. Their professional development is all about this, not knowledge-based academics, but the learning theories and teaching strategies that they're using in the classroom. So my daughter at Argyle, she was in an AP English 3 class, and we were the only family in our school district who would not allow her to have a district-issued Chromebook. And so her teacher was doing a lesson. She was using her 4 C's: collaboration, critical thinking, communication. And so she broke the kids up into groups, and they were talking about philosophy, and each group got a different philosophy. And she sent them out on this website, a free website, and they were supposed to take a quiz. And my daughter didn't have a Chromebook, so her teacher told her to take it on her cell phone. So she's taking this quiz, and she's going, "Ooh, my mom wouldn't like this." So she screenshotted it. It was 30 questions, and they asked things like, do you believe God is almighty and sovereign? Agree or disagree? Do you believe homosexuality is unnatural? Agree or disagree? Do you believe children should be protected at all costs? Agree or disagree? And it went through 30 questions, and then this website created a tension score and a report. And my daughter's score or report said, you said that you believe in an almighty and loving God, but you also said children should be protected at all cost. There's natural disasters all the time, and children are maimed and killed. If there was a loving God, he would protect the child. So when I went to the teacher, appalled, she said, and she's a young teacher, and she told me that her job was to teach my child to critically think for the workforce. I could have gone after that teacher, but one, because of federal law, she broke federal law. But what's more important is I went to the school board and I testified, and I said, look, I could go after this teacher, but I know the professional development of this teacher. I know what she was doing. I know what the 4 C's are. But ultimately, the superintendent is responsible for the curriculum in this school district. And even more importantly, our locally elected school board, who's just the team of 8 following the superintendent's recommendation, the money that goes through, that comes in through those programs, that framework, the funding, comes through that locally elected school board. Before they sign off on that money, they have a responsibility to know what that program is, who's behind it, and how will it impact the children in our district. Because I can tell you that the kids that came over to my house after taking that quiz, all of them said they felt terrible about themselves. That's why our kids are confused. These type of programs, these online programs, are very dangerous. And our school districts need to be held accountable, but we also have to understand that they're being controlled by the state, who's being controlled by the federal government, who's being controlled by the red people.
I've been reading about this SEL and just how it's so confusing and trying to figure out how this works. So I think you just answered my question. They're integrating it into all the courses.
Yes.
All the courses.
All the courses.
So is that part of the data mining?
Yes.
Okay, so I've also been looking into trying to figure, like you said, one of the things you said was most accurate that really highlighted is find out who is financially benefiting. from this stuff, because all of these programs, this is like playing whack-a-mole with our legislators, with our superintendents, with our teachers. It's like playing whack-a-mole with the green people.
Yes.
The head of the snake is with the money up top. And I've been trying to trace this thing down. And I found a guy named Andy Keller. And this Andy Keller is with a mental health organization that came out of Colorado. And he's developed what they call a consortium, which I kept finding was embedded in language in the SB 11. And they get the money. And they are a nonprofit data mining organization that provides a connection between local people, schools or children, and the government, and are able to formulate it and then to, just in my words, to milk it into research that says what they want it to say.
Exactly.
So that they can sell us more stuff
Yes.
and make more money. And I looked at his researchers and their sociologists, I looked at their degrees, and the first 10 that I got were out of California.
Alice, can I extend this a little bit further? If this hasn't lit a fire under you right now, just for your kids' sake alone, they are going to use that mental health program and those data points. There was like over 600 when I started researching this back in the day. But they're gonna implement this and enforce the red flag laws.
Yes.
And they will take what they're seeing from your children and the anxiety and the depression from your children that they're seeing in the schools, and they will say your child's home is a danger, and they will send the police to get your guns. So it's all encompassed, it's all intertwined, and yes, it is integrated in all the subjects. So just because it's in the health class does not mean you won't see it in the social studies class, because they're saying that many of the founders are gay, and it goes back further, but it's all integrated.
And to your point, now I'll get your question. I just want to do this thought to your point and your point with the Meadows Foundation. The money guy in Texas, and this is in this packet, and it's on the website. In 2000, Bill Gates gave the TASA, the Texas Association of School Administrators, $7 million. And then the Gates Foundation gave the TEA another $7 million. And that money was to be used for professional development and to bring technology into the school districts, that one-to-one. Then TASA was given another $6.5 million. If you think of it in terms, and I know I don't want to go there because it's kind of crazy, but think of it in terms of a philanthropic business model. So what Bill Gates has done across the country, and specifically in Texas through TASA's new vision for public education, and I encourage you to find that new vision for public education. It's that new vision sets up new learning standards, new assessments, new curriculum. There was a high performance consortium that was set up in the state of Texas. There were 23 school districts that aligned their standards to Gates's new vision of public education. C-Scope was the same thing. It was using the same learning theories and teaching strategies, and it was put into 875 small and rural school districts. So they blanketed the whole state with these learning theories and teaching strategies that are based on actually a Soviet model from Levidotsky behavioral training.
Wow.
So that philanthropic, that grant money got into our school districts, bought through the superintendents, who then are the team of 8, and they're the leader of the team of 8, and they're getting it, and the school boards are just signing off on it.
Now, what's important to understand is these organizations, like the Meadows Foundation, which is actually based out of the Texas organization where Andy Keller is out of SMU. There's another guy, Tom Luce, who started the Meadows Mental Health, and he's all about this Texas 2030. And when you start digging in even further, Texas 2030 is all about the data collection, and to your point, Lisa, it's about putting data tags and monitoring individuals and communities. And think of it this way. In the past, in the United States, we had a K through 12 education system that was knowledge fact-based. When you went to school, you graduated in 12th grade, and then you were free. You were free to go down a vocational path. You were free to go to college, and college actually meant something. That created the greatest economy in the world. What this system that the red people are putting in place is designed to do is to equalize America in the world. And people say HB5 was about getting rid of the STAR test. This was a couple of sessions ago. That's how it was marketed. But what did HB5 do? And you know, that set up our pathways. So now at our students' pathways. So now at the end of 8th grade, our children have to get on a pathway, and we're going to just educate you to go down this pathway. What does that do? That stifles our education system to where our children, when they graduate, and they go to a 2-year program to be, you know, they get a job, but they're on that track. In the past, what made America great is that we had that solid knowledge-based foundation. We had teachers who actually knew how to teach math and didn't have to integrate all this other stuff in it. The teachers that knew how to teach history and English. We're now in this workforce system, this global system, and they're tracking and monitoring and guiding our children down a pathway using mental health and workforce. So instead of an education of an equal opportunity where all kids have a solid foundation and they have an equal opportunity at success in life, they also have a responsibility. And they use that knowledge to go out in the world, and they may fail. And that's okay, because a lot of us have failed a lot. But what this is an education of equity and equal outcomes. And it's not our children as individuals who have the opportunity to decide what that outcome is. It's going to be based on an algorithm that these people are making a lot of money off of. And our children are seen as an investment vehicle instead of a Texan who just needs to be taught to read well and write well, learn math well, know history, so that they have an equal opportunity at success. So we have the answer for the solution to this. It's just to get back and take back our local school districts. When our administrators in our local schools decide they're not going to fall in line with this stuff, we need local people. We need to be their back to say no to Mike Moran, to say no to what's coming into through these grants. We have to be that back, and we can. We have something to fall back on. We just have to find it in ourselves and in our local communities to push back.
Now, let's get a question here. There are a lot of companies that will give school districts free software for the clinics, and all the kids' medical histories in there, and then they
Yes.
have free flu shot, or they come to the school, and then they get the parents' insurance information, they get, it is just unbelievable the information that they can get, but it's free to the schools, and they're, very expensive software, so the schools are really motivated. But they have to provide a lot of data on all the students to get.
And go on the Women on the Wall website and pull this packet up, because to your point, what's coming next, that interoperability, all of these agency databases, there's a program called Project Unicorn, and it's making all of these databases interoperable. And and Congress is looking at a bill called the Health Advanced Research Projects Agency. This bill would set up this agency. It's called HARPA, H-A-R-P-A. And basically, it makes all of these wraparound services. Think of our schools as the hub of a wheel, and that's where kids are gonna go for school. But then you've got the spokes of the wheel are all of these wraparound services.
Is that what they're calling community schools?
Yes.
Arnie Duncan,
That's scary.
Yes.
Arnie Duncan proposed it back when he was
Yes.
part of that.
Okay.
And it's in Texas. They're already setting it up. They're already piloting. And one thing, if your school district is collecting data or setting up G Suite accounts or Google accounts, and they aren't getting, especially for children who are 13 and under, they're being told that they just have to get parental consent. The problem is Google and these kind of companies are making all of this data interoperable. And right now, it's against federal law, COPA. And be watching in Eames ISD, which is down in Austin and Westlake. There's a parent who last week testified in front of the school board, and she's forcing them to not have her child on Google accounts. If they refuse, she can sue them right now. But Congress is meeting in October to update the COPA law because they know it's illegal, but they're doing it right now. So we need to have administrators in school districts that understand that Google, they are mining that data.